March 1996. Still working as a picture framer. Newly single. And that's all I remember from March of 1996. Except what I have written down here in my trusty notebook binder, 3-ring binder. The books that I read in March of 1996. Let's jump right in. The first book was Spider-Man: Carnage in New York by David Michelinie and Dean Wesley Smith. Not sure how you pronounce David's last name. So this is a Spider-Man novel. Obviously, the government is trying to kill the Carnage symbiote that's on Cletus Cassidy. But of course, they screw it up, and Carnage gets loose, and Spider-Man has to stop him. That's basically it. I feel like I read this one not long ago in the timeline of my little 3-ring binder here, because that synopsis sounds very familiar. But it's, if you like Spider-Man, if you like Carnage, it's a nice original novel. Next up, we have Borderlands 2, edited by Thomas F. Monteleone. Again, another name I'm not sure I'm pronouncing correctly. This has nothing to do with the video game, since it didn't exist. The video game didn't exist back then. Borderlands 2, it's an anthology. It's a horror anthology, and in this one, the idea was to avoid all typical monsters, so no vampires, werewolves, zombies, any of that kind of stuff. Avoid those monster horror tropes. So it's more psychological or psychosexual or some body horror. And you've got authors, I made my notes, you have authors like F. Paul Wilson, Joe R. Lansdale, Bentley Little, Charles L. Grant, Brian Hodge, just a great group of authors. And obviously, it's Borderlands 2, so the second in a series. I don't remember how many there were, but this was the second one. Seems obvious. I have to turn the page. Next up, book number 3 is The Lascaux Tangent by Richard North Patterson. This is Richard North Patterson's first book. Huge best-selling author, writer of thrillers and such. Thought I should give him a try. And this one, again, let me check my notes. The main character's name is Christopher Paget, and this is, I think he's a government lawyer, but it has all the trappings of your typical thriller: political intrigue, kidnappings, murders, all of that sort of stuff. And I was not thrilled by it. I think this is the only Richard North Patterson that I have ever read, because it didn't do anything for me. It was fine, but didn't push my buttons in a good way or a bad way. So I moved on to Daredevil: Predator's Smile by Christopher Golden. And in this one, there is a bad guy. Well, there's an arson that kills a bunch of people, and it turns out there's this bad guy that wants to wrestle away control of New York's underworld from the Kingpin, and he's got Bullseye working for him. And this arson was in Hell's Kitchen, Daredevil's territory, so Daredevil's going to get involved, and he actually has to basically team up with Kingpin to try to take down this new bad guy and Bullseye. I'm a big Daredevil fan. Let's not talk about the Ben Affleck movie. And I'm a Christopher Golden fan, so you put those two people together, and I think you get something pretty good. Really wish I had a copy of this. And then I moved on to something completely different. The Rainmaker by John Grisham. Now, interesting little trivia. This is his 6th book. But it is the first time since A Time to Kill, which I believe was his first, that he went back to actual courtroom drama. They were his other books, The Firm, The Client, whatever the others were, Pelican Brief. They were political thrillers with some legal thrillers, but this was apparently, according to my research, because I wouldn't have known this off the top of my head, but apparently the first time he actually got back in the courtroom with his story. And so our main character's name is Rudy Baylor. He's a law student, and he has to do, before he can uh, take the bar, he has to do some pro bono work. And so he ends up taking a case from this old couple whose son is dying of leukemia, and the insurance company won't pay for anything. And he realizes that this is a huge, huge case of insurance fraud, malfeasance, whatever. And so you've got this young, untested, non-lawyer, essentially, going up against a giant corporation, the insurance company. I've not seen the movie. I do remember enjoying this book and finding it to be very, very funny. Just some of the things that so Rudy ends up working with this older sleazy lawyer ish. I don't know, but some of the things they do, I think, were very funny. I remember one scene where they know that the insurance company and their legal teams and everything are listening in, and so they fake it's been a long time since I read it, but essentially they fake a phone call, making it sound like they've bribed one of the jurors or something like that. And of course, the insurance company and their lawyers, their legal team, freak out, think they've caught these guys. But it was all a ruse, and it was just, I enjoyed it. It was really funny. But then I moved on from that back to some comic book novels. Spider-Man Midnight Justice by Martin Del Rio. This is actually a young adult book. It was very thin, very quick read. Amazon says it's grades 10 to 12. And it's basically, and it even says like featuring Venom on the cover. And it's basically just a very simple Spider-Man versus Venom story. Not much to it, is fine, but again, is for youngins. Then I read Pellucidar by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is the second in the Pellucidar series. And our main character is David Innes. And at the end of At the Earth's Core, he had returned to the surface of the Earth. For those who don't know or don't remember, Pellucidar is the land in the middle of the Earth. The Earth is hollow. Pellucidar is what's inside. And David Innes and this other guy whose name I did not write down had drilled down and discovered Pellucidar, had some crazy adventures, go back up to the surface. So now, and they'd captured some bird creature, I think. So, but they'd left some people behind. So David Innes is going back. He gets back to Pellucidar, releases the captive, and he's now looking for his friends. And they had started a human revolt against these prehistoric creatures that were running Pellucidar. And since David Innes was gone, the revolt's not going well. It's just crazy, wild, fantastic pulp action from Edgar Rice Burroughs. Really dig the Pellucidar series. We get a little nonfiction. The Rants by Dennis Miller. This is back when I was a Dennis Miller fan, before he went insane. And it's just typical Dennis Miller ranting in his crazy, funny way. I used to think he was absolutely hilarious, and I really enjoyed this. I don't know how it would be now if I reread it, because he is certainly seems to have gone off the rails. I don't know, but I enjoyed it at the time. The penultimate book for March of 1996, A Stainless Steel Rat is Born by Harry Harrison. This is actually the sixth book in the Stainless Steel Rat series, but it's a prequel, so that it takes place previous to the other five books. And the Stainless Steel Rat is a science fiction series about a criminal called the Stainless Steel Rat. His name is Slippery Jim Digris. And this, as I said, this is a prequel. He's 17 years old. He wants to become a master criminal, so he gets himself arrested so that he can end up in jail with this character called the Bishop that he wants, Stainless Steel Rat wants, he's not called that yet, but he wants the Bishop to be his mentor. And they break out and have adventures and get sold into slavery and craziness. It was fine. There's going to be, I think, some more Harry Harrison coming up, because I know he's got some popular characters and series and stuff, but didn't blow me away. Not enough that I really, really kept up with this stuff. And then finally, the last book that I read in March of 1996 was a book that had just come out in March of 1996. Possibly the biggest, most well-known book, at least for my audience. The Rainmaker, because of the movie, because it's John Grisham. May or may not be well known amongst my viewers, but this one, I think you're going to know. At least some of it, because the last book that I read in March of 1996 was The Green Mile, Part 1, The Two Dead Girls, by Stephen King. So, of course, this is the famous serialized novel. The Green Mile originally came out, I believe, in 6 parts, one a month for 6 months. If I'm not mistaken, that's how they were published. And this was the first one, obviously, part 1. And so I was still, at the time, reading Stephen King. Well, maybe not. Maybe I'd fallen off the Stephen King train for a little while at this point, but decided to try this out, this serialized novel. You will find that I think part 2 might be the only one that comes up, if that. So The Green Mile, for those of you who don't know, is about Tom Hanks and Michael Clark Duncan. Well, wait. No, it's about a prison guard and a gentle giant on death row for killing 2 girls. And there's a mouse, and there's some weird stuff that happens, and a guy that can't pee. That's the guard. Actually, I don't know if that's in the book. I kind of assume it is, because I really don't remember much about it. But this is the part that introduces us to the characters and why John Coffey, I believe his name is, the gentle giant character, why he's in prison for killing these 2 girls. I'll tell you right now, I've never read the whole thing, and I've never seen the movie. Something that I have to fix. I should read The Green Mile. It's easily available in a collected edition, essentially. I would love to have the 6 parts. And I've seen them at half-price books and not picked them up because I'm not that bright sometimes. But there you go. That's the last book that I read in March of 1996. The Green Mile, Part 1, The Two Dead Girls, by Stephen King. And, for once, because sometimes I'm not that stupid, I thought of my question ahead of time, and it's inspired by that last book, which is basically, would you be interested in reading a serialized novel? And actually nowadays, I suppose it would be much, much easier. Maybe it's even being done on Kindle. I don't know. But it would be much easier and less expensive if it was just straight digital. So you could just get... I wonder if you could do like a subscription thing. If Amazon would do that. So like you pay for the whole thing up front maybe? Maybe not, because then if you don't like it and don't want the rest of it. But... it would automatically download each month as the new part came out. But let's say it's physical books like The Green Mile. Is that something? Would you put the money into that if it were an author you really liked? And of course, I'm not talking about a series like Brian Keene's The Labyrinth series, which is, that's kind of like a serialized story, but they're full-length novels. I haven't read the first 2 yet, so I don't know. I don't think they're going to be standalone at all. It's one big story. But more along the lines of The Green Mile, which were very thin books. Yeah, which is crazy for Stephen King. But they were very thin, and uh, I like the idea. It on the one hand, it kind of seems like a money grab because if you go and buy the collected edition now, it's going to cost you less than if you had bought, I believe, unless you get a hardback or something. But I believe it's going to cost you quite a bit less than if you bought all 6 parts when they came out. But I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. As I said, I was excited for it when Stephen King did it with The Green Mile, even though I didn't get pulled in. I never bought all 6 parts. But with the right author, the right story, the right covers, give me some of those beautiful paperbacks from hell type covers. I would do it. I would pick them up. I think it would be interesting. But what do you think? Is it a cash grab? Does it not interest you? Do you just want the story in one volume so you can just sit down and read it, or do you kind of dig that? I read 100 pages and there's a cliffhanger and I have to wait a month for the next part to come out, and then there's going to be a cliffhanger in that one 6 times. Well, 5 times for a cliffhanger, hopefully. If it's a 6 book thing, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comments below. And if you have any comments, questions, or corrections, you can put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, I am still on Twitter at Ronin5757. And my Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is Eric Smith 5757. That's Eric with a K. ERIKSMITH 5757. Excuse me. So that was ERIKSMITH 5757. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for you this week. So until next week, read more books.